The desert wind carried more than dust that day, it carried desperation. Beneath the brutal July sun, a lone figure moved through the arid landscape, his shadow long and trembling against the baked earth. His legs, strong but unsteady, bore the weight not just of his own body, but of a life far more fragile clutched in his arms. Tocho, an Apache warrior, staggered onward, his breath short, his eyes dry, his hope nearly gone. In his embrace, a baby, limp from hunger and heat, stirred weakly, letting out a whimper no louder than the breeze. Ahead, like a ghost out of place, stood a weathered cabin, wood scorched gray from time, surrounded by tired fields. Tocho hesitated, his chest rising with both fear and exhaustion. He had lost everything, his tribe, his wife, his land. What remained was the child, the last ember of a world on fire. And now, standing before the home of a white woman, perhaps his enemy, he had no choice but to beg. He knocked. Margaret Rose Wallace was not expecting a visitor, much less an Apache warrior on the verge of collapse, holding a near-dying child. She stood in the doorway, stunned. Her grief was her daily companion, her son had fallen in the war between the states, and her husband, Thomas, succumbed to the fever 2 winters back. She lived now with only her goats, her Bible, and silence. But something in Tocho's eyes pierced through the fog of her mourning, eyes not wild with violence, but hollowed by loss. He spoke one word, milk. For a long breath, she said nothing. She saw the baby, half-starved, swaddled in a rough blanket with tribal patterns, and instinct pushed past her fear. Come, she said softly. She had never seen an Apache this close. The newspapers called them heathens and monsters. The church had said they were savages to be feared or converted. But this man didn't seem to fit those stories. He was broken. Human. And so was she. Tocho stepped inside, each movement careful. He looked at her with the solemn dignity of one who had bled for his people, for his family, and for a child he didn't know how to save. Margaret fed the baby goat's milk warmed with water and a pinch of sugar. The child clung to life, each swallow a miracle. As he fed, the warrior's shoulders dropped ever so slightly, the trembling in his hand subsiding. For hours they said little. That night, Margaret let them sleep by the fire. She didn't ask why he was alone. The child's mother, she presumed, was dead. She didn't ask who had killed her. Maybe white men. Maybe soldiers. Maybe even her own husband's people. All she knew was that grief was a language they both spoke. The days passed. Tocho offered to leave, but each time he tried, the baby, whom he called Sheila, my little brother, wept inconsolably. Margaret had not held a child in years, yet her arms remembered. Her voice began to sing lullabies she thought she had forgotten. One afternoon, the child reached for her breast, and Margaret, after a long breath, chose to nurse him. Her body, surprisingly, responded. Her heart did too. The moment his mouth latched to her skin, something ancient awakened, an instinct more powerful than fear, loss, or war. Tocho knelt beside her, eyes wide, humbled. You are his mother now, he whispered. I already was, she replied. Tocho stayed. At first, he worked outside, repairing the fences, chopping wood, gathering herbs Margaret no longer had the strength to fetch. Then, slowly, he began speaking, first in Apache, then in broken English. He told her how his wife, Naetsi, had died defending their camp from raiders. How the baby had survived by hiding in the roots of a mesquite tree. How he had wandered, hunted, begged, been shot at and spit on, until he found her. One night, under the stars, Margaret confessed she had buried her son without a grave, just a name scratched on wood. Tocho asked if he could carve a stone. They placed it beside the garden. As the baby grew, laughter returned to the cabin. Sheila's first word was, Ma. Not Apache. Not English. Just, Ma. It was meant for Margaret. One day, A band of horsemen approached, armed, wearing blue. Soldiers. One recognized Margaret from her husband's unit and demanded to inspect the property. When they saw Tocho, guns were drawn. The baby cried. "He's my child," Margaret said. "That's an Indian," one barked. "No. He's a father. That's his son. And now, mine too. What are you doing with a savage?" "I'm raising a family," she said, stepping between them. The captain hesitated, then lowered his rifle. They rode away. That night, Tocho said something he had never said before: "You have more courage than many warriors." Margaret smiled. "And you have more heart than any man I've known." Years passed. They raised Sheila in 2 tongues. He learned to hunt and to read. He carved flutes and read poetry. He knew the names of constellations from both the Apache sky and the Christian one. Margaret taught him compassion. Tocho taught him pride. Together, they gave him a foundation stronger than blood, a legacy of love born not from biology, but from choice. When Margaret fell ill, Tocho never left her side. Sheila, now a young man, held her hand as she whispered her final words: "Thank you, for giving me back my heart." At her grave, beneath the oak tree where they had once hung a swing for Sheila, Tocho carved the words: "Here lies a warrior. A mother. A bridge between worlds." Sheila became a healer. He returned to the reservations, not as a rescuer, but as a son of 2 peoples. He told his story wherever he went. And always, when asked who his mother was, he answered with a quiet, proud voice: "She was the one who fed my hunger, and healed my father's soul."